Think about the biggest decision you've made today, this week, or this month. Did you choose well? Was it the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do? When we choose what is good and avoid evil, we grow in God's grace and become holier. So it's really important to be able to determine whether our actions are good or not. Let's say you just got a new electronic device. As you're reading through the instruction manual to figure out its features and how it works, you come across words in big, bold print that reads, "Do not submerge in water." Would your response be, "How dare these people tell me what I can and can't do with my device? They don't even know me. This is my device and I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, and however I want with it." No. Most people wouldn't even think that because we all know that water and electronic devices don't mix well. In fact, water could ruin my device. But have you ever heard these words? "This is my life," or "This is my body. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want with my life." I've heard and maybe even said things that resemble these statements. However, this mentality does not work for our ultimate good. God created us for a life with Him, and He has a plan for us. He knows what will break us and what will fulfill us. So, He sets before us an instruction manual, rules and guidelines that teach us right from wrong, so we can avoid damage to our souls and to live in unity with Him. So how do we know when an act is right or wrong? Does it conform to God's will or not? When we're talking about the moral goodness of an act, we're talking about how God sees it in its entirety. He's not only concerned with what we do, but also why we do it and when, where, and how we do it. The church gives us 3 elements that determine whether an act is morally right or wrong. All 3 of these elements have to be good in order for the act as a whole to be good. The first and most important element is the object, what we do. The second element is our intention, why we do it. And the third is the circumstances surrounding the action, the when, where, and how it's done. Now this is a silly example, but it demonstrates how these elements work. Let's pretend I'm on a field trip at a museum with my class. At the end of a long day of walking around, my feet are tired. When we get to the exit of the building, there's a sign and a few chairs that says visitor seating. I choose to sit for the intention of resting my feet in the proper designated area. Now choosing this doesn't make me a saint, but all of the elements are good, therefore there's nothing bad about my decision. Let's change it up and say that there's a classmate that I really don't like. And as we're touring the museum, I heard her talk about how she sprained her ankle and couldn't wait to sit down. So, as we approach the exit of the building, I see that there is 1 chair left. So I speed up a little bit and I take it so she can't have it. Even though the object of sitting is neutral, my intention is motivated by malice, thus it is not in conformity with God's will. So that action as a whole is morally wrong. Okay, let's change the circumstances. So I'm walking around this museum all day, and all I want to do is rest my tired feet. I glance up to see this beautiful gold-trimmed chair with red velvet lining and a rope around it with a sign that reads, "Exhibit, do not touch." But I think to myself, wow, that looks really comfortable, and my feet really hurt. So I go and I sit down. That action is not morally acceptable because the circumstances don't allow me to sit in that chair. Hopefully now we see how the object, intention, and circumstances determine the righteousness or lack thereof of an action. In the example I gave, I used a morally neutral object, sitting. There are, however, objects or actions that are intrinsically evil, meaning they are always wrong despite the goodness of the intention or the circumstances. Some examples of intrinsically evil objects include blasphemy, murder, direct abortion, adultery, and idolatry. These things are never permitted because they are incompatible with the love of God and neighbor. So it's important to educate ourselves in the moral law that God has handed down through Scripture and tradition. Blessed Louise Teza once said, "God's invitation to become saints is for all, not just a few. Sanctity, therefore, must be accessible to all. In what does it consist? In a lot of activity? No. In doing extraordinary things? No. For this could not be for everybody and at all times. Therefore, sanctity consists in doing good, and in doing this good in whatever condition and place God has placed us. Strive to lead a good moral life by studying God's law, listening to the teachings of the church, practicing the virtues, forming your conscience, and working with God's abundant grace to conform your life to His will and grow in sanctity."
I'm Bishop Joseph Strickland. Thank you so much for viewing this episode of The Way of Christ. It is an excellent resource for growing in your Catholic faith, for deepening your life in Jesus Christ. You can purchase your own copy of The Way of Christ at stphilipinstitute.org/store. God bless you, and let us continue to grow in His light.